Good evening. Welcome to Truth Seekers. I'm Mike Fishkin. Seated next to me is Vern Bissell, back again replacing Jay, who's off for a few weeks. Sorry we missed you a couple of weeks ago. Strained my back a little bit, and we just ran a rerun again. But we're live right now. If you're watching today, May 22nd, 2010, Saturday, then you can call us. The phone numbers are up there. We're live. And any questions you have relating to truth-seeking in the spiritual, philosophical vein, of course, the most important thing is we think we've found the most important truth, and that is all of evidence that you'd want in the realm of seeking for meaning, for why we're here on this planet, how we arrived here, where we're going, do we live, is there life after death, is all found in the Bible, and the evidence is overwhelming through prophetic evidence being proved 100% of the time fulfilled. Many other things that we've talked about in over 230 hours of programming over the last 6.5 years here. That's the most important thing. We love to talk about any questions relating to that. That's the key. But we've been showing lots of film on and off about in science, and how science also conforms to what the Bible says, because everything that the Bible says we believe. And I wasn't a believer up until I was about 29 years old. I thought this was all nonsense, but I hadn't studied the Bible and other things related to it. But everything that the Bible speaks to is accurate. It's totally amazing. And if you have any doubts about that, just give us a call, and we've done a lot of studying in a lot of these areas, and we can refer you to where you can get the answers if we don't have them right here with us. But in science, especially in the area of evolution, science is great. Scientists, when they're doing practical things, provide the information we need. But when they get into these theoretical things that happened supposedly millions and billions of years ago, according to secular scientists, there's an awful lot of conjecture and wishful thinking and hopeful monster theories coming true. And we really feel that the evidence in the Bible supports creation so clearly. All science supports, true science supports creation when you look at the facts to a much greater extent than anything you can conjure up to evolution. And by that meaning that we've come from smaller, more insignificant in terms of the DNA, the amount of DNA and everything there, from bacteria on up to us, that the evidence just doesn't hold any water for that. But it does hold for instant creation through God putting the DNA all together. And we talked about a lot of that stuff. We love to talk about it. We're going to show a fairly complex subject, radio halos, which, according to a lot of creation scientists, some of which used to be evolutionary scientists before they changed their viewpoints, this information seems to show clear evidence of a rapid increase, acceleration of nuclear decay. Because secular scientists will often say, well, we know that the Earth is billions of years old because we can, based on the uranium decay, radioactive decay rate, we can show that those rocks have been here hundreds of millions of years, a couple of billion years for some of them. And these scientists doing research that they've done, the papers have been published and out there, the evidence seems to indicate that the rate of decay was not uniform, that the rate of decay we see today sped up, was accelerated enormously at least one time in the past. And they really feel that that happened during the flood that's depicted and spoken about in the Bible. And so we're going to listen to a scientist talk about that. Andrew Snelling is the scientist. He's a PhD in geology from Australia originally. And he worked for many, many years with mining companies, working in terms of discovering and mineral deposits and putting that together so they can make money in that field. So he's an expert in rocks and mineral, and really interesting in this. And he's got papers published on all this. So anything that he talks about here, you can go to the website that he's affiliated with, which is Answers in Genesis, just as it sounds, Answers in Genesis, one long thing, .org, and go to their little search engine there and put in radio halos and put in Snelling or just radio halos, and you'll come up with the papers that he did. Certainly if you put in radiohalos and Snelling, and he's at the forefront of this. And we've shown some film, we've talked a lot about some of the other things they discovered in this process, this rate project that went on for about, was it 6 years, Vern?
7 years.
7 years.
Comment on that. If you want to comment on that, good.
A few years back, and we've talked about helium, the fact that helium indicates a very young Earth age, the amount of helium still in rocks today, and the amount of carbon-14 that we find in diamonds and in coal indicate a very much younger age for the Earth. In fact, it seems to indicate in thousands of years, not hundreds of millions, certainly not billions. Way too short a time frame for evolution to have occurred. And you know, so much truth is withheld. I mean, you look at what's going on with the stuff you get from a lot of politicians, which is shown to be nonsense. They've got an agenda. The movie Expelled shows...
Only some have an agenda.
Only some.
Or maybe some have a different
whole lot of them, increasing numbers it seems, have...
I do comment about rate when you get a chance, but go ahead.
Have an agenda. And it's the same thing in science. Scientists are human beings. They want to prove their point sometimes, especially when it relates to God. You wanted to make a point before we get into this film.
I do. I want to comment about the RATE project, and that was a project that was designed by the Institute for Creation Research, at that time located in San Diego, and it really worked the way science is supposed to work. Science, if it's done right, it should give you successful predictions. And that's really at the basis of what we consider the modern, the scientific method of how to establish scientific truth. If something has predictive value, then it fits in with science. And so ICR structured and framed the RATE project very precisely. They had a team of experts from various areas, and the RATE project was dealing more with radioisotopes in the age of the Earth. That's where the RATE comes from, radioisotopes and the age of the Earth. In 1998, they published the first book describing what the RATE project would investigate. The book was about that thick. I don't know how many pages. Maybe Michael knows, but it was probably about 500 or 600 pages. I was tempted to buy the book, but at the time when it came out, it was $80, and I thought, I think I'll just wait until the project is finished. It was a 7-year project, as it turned out. Some of the results were published in some papers preliminary to the final Volume 2 publication in 2005. But then when the project was finished, it was published in a book they labeled RATE 2, which was in fact the results of their 7 years of research. And they finished that project with a conference in San Diego, and I marked my calendar a year before because I wanted to be sure to go to that conference. So it was on my calendar for a year to go down for the RATE conference and hear the results. And to me, it was stunning, the success that they had in fact, getting the results that were predicted. That's the way science works, and it shows that they began with a right-headed idea, not with a wrong-headed idea. It did not wind up with all of the questions being answered, but many of the answers were there and just what were expected. The answers were the things that were expected. And so the radio halos that will be on the clip that will be shown here in just a minute were just one part of several areas of the RATE project. So that's a little bit more of a framework. Maybe you've already covered that in times when I've not been here,
well,
Michael. But
not as well as that, that's for sure. Okay. And they covered carbon-14, and no one had ever looked for carbon-14 in diamonds. And because secular scientists figured that there was no way it could be there because it half-lives and decays away, so you couldn't even detect it.
And if someone did, they would say, well, it had to be contamination because we know there's no, there would never be any residual carbon-14 in diamonds because it would have been gone long ago, so they would just write it off as contamination. That was another thing that came with the RATE project was expecting some of those kinds of complaints or accusations. Very extreme care was taken to make sure that samples were maintained clean without contamination, and so the care that was exercised was really excellent and all described in the publications about that. So